Well, thanks so much for joining us. We have a lot to talk about here on the Weather Network. We are following some active weather, and here's our developing stories right now. We are watching out for those thunderstorms that are starting to develop through Ontario. We're also taking a look at who saw some breaking weather records. And lastly, Alberta's weather phenomenon. We'll tell you exactly what they experienced coming up. Now, let's jump in towards Ontario, where we have been seeing some pretty strong storms sparking up south of Lake Ontario. So this is our risk for today. In the yellows, we see a non-severe risk, and that stretches pretty much right out of southwestern Ontario through the Greater Toronto area and then up in towards Cottage Country, even in towards Quebec as well. So we have all the right ingredients there to see some storms. And as we take a look at our live radar, jumping onto here, we can see south of Lake Ontario, that's where we have some pretty potent cells popping up through here, and they are very slow moving. These have the potential to drop around 70 millimeters of rain in just 1 hour. So right now, really targeting the St. Catharines area through Niagara Falls. Grimsby, you are also included in this as well. Temperatures around the low 20s through here, so watch out for some very strong, heavy downpours in the area. Now, I also want to talk about this. This is from yesterday. In the Goderich area, there was a statement about tornadoes. Now, we did see a very strong cell move through. This is from yesterday. This is not live radar happening now. The cell moved in towards Goderich. We had Kasia Badurka covering that story earlier this morning, and she surveyed the area. And the good news is there was no damage reported through there, but definitely a scary situation because the 3-year anniversary of the Goderich tornado just around the corner. Now, in terms of water spouts, this is where risk for today. So we are seeing them along Lake Erie, Lake Ontario as well, and then also Huron and the Georgian Bay also could be seeing the right conditions to be seeing these water spouts. Different temperatures of air masses could produce these tightly spun, sort of looking like a funnel cloud, like a tornado, but it's on the water. It is not a tornado. I also want to talk about some of our temperatures. Pretty impressive, pretty hot. This is notable. Edmonton got up to 30.3 degrees. That's the first day in 2014. First time in 2014 that Edmonton has gotten towards that 30 club. So very impressive. Warfield, that was our hot spot at 39.3. So quite a clash of temperatures. We see this huge trough, this huge dip in the jet stream, almost down towards Texas, Louisiana. And this is allowing a lot of the cool air to filter in towards eastern portions of the country and the warm air to stick out to the west. So hot and humid. Also taking a look at some of our current temperatures through Atlantic Canada, feeling like 40 in St. John's, very hot. Now, yeah, a little too close for comfort, isn't it, Kasia? Thanks so much for that update. Now, this is a recap. This is not live radar. This is a recap of what we saw yesterday. So we saw some strong storms off the lake heading in towards Goderich. There was a tornado statement, but as Kasia told us, the good news is we did not see significant damage in the area. Now, I also want to show you the risk of the water spouts for Huron. Also could be seeing that. Now, I want to show you exactly what some of the funnel clouds looked like yesterday. Tornado, but definitely something to keep an eye out for. Now, I want to show you our risk of some weather that we are seeing today. We are seeing some possible water spouts forming, some possible funnel clouds forming through southwestern Ontario. So this is something to keep an eye out for. Windsor stretching up in towards the Chatham-Kent area, Essex included in that. And this is where we are just seeing different air masses, and this is what could produce those funnel clouds, cold core funnel clouds. Now, this is also an interesting story. Have you ever heard of a heat burst? This happened just outside of Calgary yesterday. The temperatures were cooling through the overnight, and then all of a sudden really drove up 26 to 29 degrees in just an hour.
This weather's
yesterday, and Calgary also saw a heat burst. Interesting. Overnight, the temperature started to decline, and then all of a sudden, the spark up, the dew point went from 12 to 1 in just a matter of minutes. More on the heat burst online at the Weather Network. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and we're taking a look at a risk of seeing some storms today through the prairies. So take a look at this. Isolated and severe north of Edmonton up towards Slave Lake. That's where we could see some of the most potent cells. But then again, through the foothills, Calgary included in that. That's where we could be seeing the right conditions for thunderstorms to pop up. I know it's been hot, it's been humid, you have been feeling a lot of the humidity throughout the prairies. And again, this stretches in towards Manitoba as well, with risk of storms, and even in towards northwestern Ontario. We have all the right conditions there to be seeing some of these things. Now, also quickly, I want to mention we are seeing weather advisories of storms through northwestern.
Visit our new and improved.
Oh yes, active weather. That's exactly what we are seeing right now through southern Ontario. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, meteorologist Monica Viswani, and we have been getting some pretty impressive photos sent to us on Twitter. Take a look at this. This is a funnel cloud shot near Leamington. We'll get into this storm coming up. And also, Monica, we have been seeing hail through the St. Catharines area, and this is a very slow-moving storm. So let's switch over to our radar. And Monica, I want you to break down sort of what we're seeing, what people in these specific areas can expect, because depending on where you are, things could be pretty different.
That's right, Rachel. So if you're in the Niagara-St. Catharines region, we do have severe thunderstorm warnings in effect there. Those are as a result of training storms. And what that means is essentially we're going to see lots of rain in a very short period of time, and the storms will just redevelop along the same boundary, and that pushes all the way into the States. Similarly, in through parts of eastern Ontario, we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing them here towards Perth, for example, moving in the Ottawa area. So also rain is a larger concern there.
Yes. So special weather statements for both of these places where you saw the hail, that was southern Lake Ontario towards St. Catharines, in towards Niagara Lake. And I was talking to meteorologist Doug Gillum. Some places here have already seen that 75 millimeters of rain that we were talking about earlier. Now through here, Monica, what's the difference between these storms and the St. Catharines storms?
Well, with these and the St. Catharines, they're actually very similar setup. It's mainly as a result of the fact that they're training, meaning that they're redeveloping the same areas. So persistent stationary bands of rain will bring the potential for localized flooding. So that's the same type of setup. What's different is what's happening in the GTA with the funnel clouds that we looked at, and that has to do with the upper low that we're experiencing. And the upper low allows for colder air aloft or higher up in the atmosphere, and at the surface we have relatively warmer air. So that allows for that instability, and we're seeing that rotation. These are not necessarily as big as some of the other tornadoes that we see during severe weather outbreaks, but they can always touch down, so you do need to take precautions.
Okay, now we are seeing a cell sort of heading out of the Mississauga area in towards Toronto. But quickly, Monica, I want to talk about these weather advisories. These are for cold core funnel clouds. And so what does that exactly mean?
So that has to do with that instability. It really has to do with warmer air rising and sort of meeting some of that cooler air aloft. So really just keep in mind the advisories and do take cover if you do see that. Treat all tornadoes alike.
All right, perfect. More on the active weather coming up here on the Weather Network. All right, and tornado lookalikes, well, that's sort of what we are looking at for today. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and taking a look at this special weather statement. Originally just started out of Windsor towards the Essex area. Now we can see that is stretched right through the Greater Toronto area, including Oshawa, heading up towards Tweed and Trenton. Now, this is a weather statement to see cold core funnel clouds. So this is because we have cold air aloft, relatively warm air at the surface, a lot of instability through here. So we could be seeing those funnel clouds forming. So of course this does bring the risk of seeing a tornado. So we need to keep our eye on the skies today. We have already seen some very active weather pushing through the Greater Toronto area. This is a risk at the thunderstorms for today. We have seen a lot of thunderstorms towards the St. Catharines area, Niagara on the Lake included in that. And then again moving into the GTA, Mississauga through Toronto. So some very active weather making its way through. Now moving our attention over in towards the prairies, they're seeing the same situation today. A risk of non-severe thunderstorms, isolated and severe north of Edmonton, but mainly non-severe out of Alberta, stretching in towards Saskatchewan. And then in terms of some of our temperatures, the big story out west in BC is the dryness and it's the heat. So again, 26 degrees, feeling like 31 in Nanaimo. Warfield yesterday was the national hotspot at 36 degrees. Stay with us. More weather to come. Severe thunderstorm watches, cold core funnel clouds, slow moving systems. We're talking about a lot here on the Weather Network. Rachel Schoutsen here with you. And I'm so glad you could join us because this is a live look at our radar right now. And we are seeing some slow moving cells moving through St. Catharines, through Niagara on the Lake. Some areas have already seen 75 millimeters of rain through here. Also being cautious of some rotation on these cells stretching out of Windsor up in towards London, out of Mississauga in towards Toronto. if you're driving right now on the 427 on the Gardner, soaking wet roads. So it's a tricky time for travel right now through southern Ontario. Taking a look as well through northeastern Ontario rather, we are seeing a severe thunderstorm watch for areas like Maddock and Tweed. So a lot of active weather going on right now. Now, this right now is a weather advisory for cold core funnel clouds. This is where we are seeing that they could form along the lake shore, so along north shores of Lake Erie through Lake Ontario rather as well. And when a cold core funnel does form, this could possibly lead in towards a tornado. So again, keeping a very close eye on this. Now again, this is the severe thunderstorm watch through the Tweed and through the Maddock area. This is continuing to move on further east. Looks like it's stretching up in towards Ottawa now. So again, a lot of active weather, and I want to provide you with some more information. Well, a lot of weather to talk about, so I'm so glad you could join us. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, meteorologist Monica Viswani. And Monica, we are seeing weather advisories in place for a lot of areas along the lake shores, and this is because these could produce some funnel clouds. Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Yes, it actually has to do with a system, or really the environment that we have in place. So upper level low, lots of circulation, cooler air aloft, and that's been allowing for these thunderstorms, which would normally otherwise be weak, to produce some funnel clouds that definitely look very menacing.
All right, and I want to show you a photo of funnel cloud. This was sent in to us from Leamington, and this is what a funnel cloud looks like if someone is wondering. So we're going to take this full screen now. And Monica, what's the danger of this?
Well, it's a funnel cloud until it reaches the surface, and once it makes contact with the surface, then it becomes a tornado. And that's a concern, of course, because of debris, of the normal concerns that you see with tornadoes. These normally produce weak tornadoes, though.
Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the active weather that we are seeing right now. So for someone traveling through the GTA right now, along the Gardner, along the 427, looks like we are seeing some very potent cells through here, and then also too around the St. Catharines area. So what's the difference between these storms?
Well, all the storms that you see that are east of the 401 now, and actually this one particular one that's going right over the core of downtown Toronto, these are the ones that are producing the funnel clouds, and that's because of that upper level circulation as well. Whereas what's happening in around the St. Catharines area has to do with training storms, and those are storms that will sit stationary in one region, produce lots and lots of rain, and possibly localized flooding, whereas the other cells that we saw in the GTA, they're pretty quick moving.
Okay. And I was talking to meteorologist Doug Gillum. Some places throughout St. Catharines have already seen 75 millimeters of rain, so very strong stationary storms through here. But then we're not done with the storms yet. Also through northeastern Ontario, we are also seeing some severe thunderstorm watches in place.
Yeah, there are actually a couple of warnings in the area of Tweed, for example, and that's a similar setup to what's happening in the Niagara region. So we get this line here that goes all the way from Tweed east to Perth and then almost to Ottawa at this point. And once again, training storms. So the same area is seeing heavy downpours. Also some small hail has been reported as well, but the hail is not the largest threat in this case.
Okay, and I also want to mention with these storms, this is Highway 7 right along here heading up in towards Ottawa. So it looks like if you are taking that route, if you know someone on that route right now, they could be running into some very low visibility. Now, in terms of the thunderstorm risk, I know we've already seen some thunderstorms move through here, but Monica, looks like we do have a widespread risk for today, but we also have the risk of seeing water spouts as well.
Yes, and this is attributed actually to the same environment, so it's that same upper low, and it has to do with that colder air well up into the atmosphere, but the relatively warmer conditions at the lake. So water spouts also can produce tornadic-like components.
All right, so water spouts, not tornadoes, may look like them, but not. Stay with us here. More active weather coverage continues. Thanks so much for that update, Chris. And it was a scary sight yesterday in Godbridge as a water spout did form moving in towards the area. Kasha was there earlier today. No damage has been reported, but very close to the anniversary. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and we do have a special weather statement in place right now. We could be seeing some cold core funnel clouds forming off the lake shores of Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, and we have been already seeing some very active weather. We have been seeing thunderstorms just bursting through the area, through the greater Toronto area, up in towards Pickering, even in towards northeastern Ontario. Now, these storms do have the potential to see some rotation again with those cold core funnel clouds. And then these storms south of Lake Ontario along St. Catharines, Niagara on the Lake, they're more of slow moving storms dropping a lot of rain. Some areas through here have seen 75 millimeters of rain already. So torrential downpours. That's what we are talking about through the Niagara region. Now, throughout the day today, we still have the risk of seeing some more thunderstorms. This stretches right out of southwestern Ontario, right through the greater Toronto area Canada and in towards Quebec. Now, another big story here at the Weather Network is the record heat throughout the Atlantic provinces. I want to let you know St. John's has broken a humidity record, an all-time humidity record, feeling like 38 degrees. In towards the Maritimes, also very warm, feeling like 31. Very hot, sticky. We're feeling that sort of soupy air mass moving through here. Also seeing some active weather out in the west. I'll get to that in a second. But first, this is how the moisture is moving through the area. And then in towards the west, we are seeing that thunderstorm risk throughout the day today. So possible isolated and severe north of Edmonton. So again, along the foothills, that's where we could be seeing the active weather. Now coming up here on the Weather Network, we're considering a very low dew point. You have to have some strong winds, a decaying thunderstorm, and temperatures were on the decline throughout the whole province, but then in Calgary went from 26 degrees up to 29 in just an hour. The dew point fell from 12 to 1 in just a matter of minutes. So a heat burst, that's what happened in Calgary. You can find out more about that on theweathernetwork.com. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and taking a look at our story throughout the west, we are looking at the chance of seeing some thunderstorms throughout the day today, isolated and severe through northern parts of Alberta, and then through the foothills. That's where we could be seeing those non-severe storms, but definitely something that will make you run indoors. So we continue to watch that risk throughout the day today. Also, jumping in towards Ontario, we continue to watch this risk as well. The risk of seeing cold core funnel clouds. So mainly along the lake shores, along Lake Erie, along Lake Ontario, we have been seeing some pretty potent cells pushing through the Greater Toronto area and adding some rotation onto those that could spell some trouble. So again, the risk is still there through much of the Greater Toronto area. Here's a live look at the radar right now through the GTA. So we do see those strong storms moving through the 400 series. So travel right now, definitely very tricky. And then we do have a different sort of storm around St. Catharines. It's a very slow moving system. Some areas around here have already seen 75 millimeters of rain. So it's slow, and it's bringing in those torrential downpours. As we take a look in towards northeastern Ontario, same sort of situation going on through here. We do have severe thunderstorm watches for places like Tweed. So again, important to keep an eye on the sky. Now you will want to stay with us here at the Weather Network. Meteorologist Monica Viswani joins us next. Well, so glad you could join us. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, meteorologist Monica Viswani, and we've been tracking some active weather through southern parts of Ontario, but it looks like we're starting to see the end through some of that. So we'll get to that in a second. I want to mention this weather advisory. This is for some cold core funnel clouds. I'll show you some pictures of some things that we have been talking about. But Monica, let's jump into the radar. Let's talk about what's going on right now.
Yeah, well, actually, if we take a look at where these cells are, they have passed the GTA. They are now over the lake at this point. The areas that could still possibly be looking at funnel clouds are really the Niagara region and then down towards the Erie shorelines, possibly even through eastern parts of the GTA still. So still a concern there, but for the Toronto area and westward, generally the threat has passed.
Okay, and some areas in St. Catharines have seen around 75 millimeters of rain, so it's a slow moving system through there. Torrential downpours are the case. Now, I want to also take us up in towards northwestern Ontario, so north of the 401, along Highway 7, a popular route getting into Ottawa. I know a lot of the warnings here have ended, but we're still seeing some strong cells move through.
That's right, and it's this line here that was previously warned, but as you mentioned, there are more cells on the way. These ones here could still produce funnel clouds, as we were just talking about, but the heavy downpours were the earlier concern. There are still some pretty good looking cells in around Bon Echo and then east of Pembroke, so heavy downpours, enough that you may have to pull over to the side of the road if you are driving.
Yes, absolutely, a good point. Now I want to show you some of the things that we have been seeing. We have been looking at funnel clouds like this. This was happening over Wheatley, so that's just outside of Leamington. We also saw funnel clouds throughout Leamington as well, so some very impressive pictures being sent into the Weather Network. Now, Monica, a funnel cloud in the air has the potential to touch down and then become a tornado.
That's right, and these are what we normally consider weak funnel clouds. They don't often make it to the surface, but when they do, they can become what we call a land spout tornado. And the mechanism for the formation is a little bit different from a soup supercell tornado, which are some of the most destructive storms.
All right. So the good news is for southern Ontario, we are getting out of that severe weather. But for places in the Atlantic provinces, the heat and the humidity, that's really their big weather story today. I do want to mention St. John's, Newfoundland broke an all-time humidity record, feeling like 38 degrees today. So that is hot, that is sticky and soupy. And this is what it looks like throughout much of the maritime provinces as well, feeling like 31 in Moncton. More on the active weather, that's coming up here on the Weather Network. Active weather, funnel clouds, big story today through parts of the country around Lake Erie, around Lake Ontario, and that's because we are seeing all the right ingredients to produce some of them. So a lot of viewers have been sending in photos from around this area, Leamington, Windsor, Chatham, Kent, and again, the risk does continue along Lake Ontario as well. We have been seeing some pretty strong thunderstorms, and they do have rotation embedded in with them. So this is when we could be seeing those swirling clouds. So this is a live look at our radar right now. Looks like these very strong storms throughout the Niagara area are continuing to move off into the states. That is good news because we have seen almost 75 millimeters of rain dropped in about an hour through here. Also saw some strong storms sweeping through the greater Toronto area. Looks like those are finally pushing off further east as well. Now taking a look at the thunderstorm risk throughout the day today, much of southern Ontario included in that, even stretching out in towards Quebec. Now this is a look at some of the moisture. And this is how it does play out. We do have a series of weak troughs in the atmosphere. So that is constantly letting some storms bubble up throughout Ontario, leaving us wet as well. Now you will want to stay with us. We're taking a look at the long weekend. That's in. Yes, we are talking about active weather right across the country. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and here's the developing stories that we are looking at right now. So some severe thunderstorm warnings, they've been issued. Who's breaking record weather? We'll tell you about that as well. And then Alberta's weather phenomenon. What happened there? I'll tell you about that as well. Now, visibility was very low. Of course, hydroplaning, also a big issue as well. This is a live look at the radar right now. So where we were showing you through St. Catharines, looks like a lot of those storms are continuing to push off further east. So they are getting out of the rain. This is heading more in towards Niagara on the lake and then in towards the states as well. Now, we do also see a lot of active weather on the northern shores of Lake Ontario along the 401 corridor. And because of this, we are seeing the risk of some funnel clouds, some cold core funnel clouds forming. And we have seen some great pictures sent in from around Leamington, from around the Windsor area. But again, anywhere along the lake shores, we do have the right ingredients to see some of those sparking up. Now, let's move into our risk for today, the risk of some storms. Unfortunately, it's pretty widespread. We see it stretching right out of southwestern Ontario through the greater Toronto area, even in towards Quebec as well. We have seen a lot of these storms push through already, so a very active day in terms of our weather. Now, we're not just talking about thunderstorms, we're also talking about water spouts as well. So it is like a tornado over the water. It could be very harmful for boaters and for swimmers. Lake Erie, Lake Huron, Ontario, even the Georgian Bay. Included in that risk, we are seeing cold air aloft, relatively warm air at the surface, and that does spell the right conditions to be producing some of those water spouts. Now, jumping out of Ontario, let's jump out in towards the west, where we are seeing the risk of some thunderstorms throughout the day today. They could be isolated and severe north of anywhere Edmonton. But I want to get in towards Saskatchewan, where we are seeing the risk of some pretty severe cells popping up through here. So a severe thunderstorm watch is issued. This is for northeast of Saskatoon, so Choiceland, Melford, Carrot River. So if you are in Saskatchewan, you will have to keep your eye on the sky because the risk could be quite significant through here today. Now, the record heat. Wow, it has been hot, hasn't it? So we're seeing Warfield 39.3. That was the hot spot in Canada. Now, you may think that this is very warm, but it's not breaking record temperatures. We are seeing the humidity record that was broken in St. John's, Newfoundland. It feels like 38 degrees out there. Very warm. Taking a look, warm here, cool to the east. We'll have more on that forecast coming up. All right, thank you so much for that. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and we're taking a look at the risk of seeing some water spouts today. And this is along Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Huron, southern parts of that, and the Georgian Bay included. So that is sort of a tornado look-alike over the water, so dangerous for boaters and for swimmers. Now, in terms of the active weather, we have not been short on that today. Moving through the greater Toronto area, some pretty powerful storms definitely impacting the drive, and then we also had a slow-moving cell over the St. Catharines area, over Niagara-on-the-Lake. Some places saw 75 millimeters of rain in just about an hour. So very slow with torrential downpours. Now, we're also seeing the risk today of some funnel clouds. Now, these funnel clouds are weak, and this is when we are seeing rotation within the atmosphere. So right now, we could be seeing them along Lake Erie and along Lake Ontario as well. We have seen some great pictures sent in from areas like Leamington, from the Essex County. And again, they are weak in nature, which is not a huge harm for us. However, if they do come closer to the ground, they could be land spouts through here. Now, in terms of the risk of the storms today, it does continue. Non-severe risk of thunderstorms. So that's stretching right out of southwestern Ontario through the Greater Toronto area and even in towards Quebec as well. So we are seeing all the right ingredients there. Now, not just in Ontario, we're taking a look at active weather, also in Saskatchewan. A severe thunderstorm watch right now for places like Melfort, Choiceland, and Carrot River. So just northeast of Saskatoon, that's where we are seeing a cell that could potentially deliver some severe weather. Also want to show you throughout Alberta, along the foothills, this is where we could be seeing some non-severe storms, and then again north of Edmonton, isolated and severe. Now, of course, you will want to stay with us here at the Weather Network. We continue to track the active weather. Okay, now take a look at this lightning first. Now, a lot of right weather characteristics had to be in place at the right time. For more on what a heat burst is and what exactly happened, theweathernetwork.com. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and we are taking a look at a non-severe risk of thunderstorms for today for the foothills. Heading further north, it could be isolated and severe. That's what we are potentially looking at. And this just issued by Environment Canada in Saskatchewan. We are looking at a severe thunderstorm watch for Melfort, Choiceland, and Carrot River. So keep an eye on the sky throughout here. Heavy downpours, very strong winds, possibly damaging winds, and hail could also be associated with severe storms. Now, in towards Ontario, I'll quickly fill you in on this. We could be seeing rotation along the lake shores in terms of our clouds. So we could be seeing cold core funnel clouds. Some have already been reported through Leamington. Alrighty, still looking at a lot of active weather, and that's happening now through northeastern Ontario. So we are seeing a severe thunderstorm watch in place for Smiths Falls and Perth. So storms moving through that area do have the potential to really spark up some severe storms through here, damaging winds, also some possible hail as well. Now, as we take a look at the Ontario story, we're also seeing the chance of seeing some funnel clouds along the lake shores. Now, I know you guys have been great with sending in photos. We've already seen some sent in from around the Leamington area, also from around Wheatley as well. And again, the risk does continue to grow today. We are seeing rotation in the atmosphere. It is weak, so that is good news. But again, we could potentially be seeing that risk throughout today. Now, I know Jacqueline Whittle has been outside today, and let's join her now. She's giving us an update on some of the active weather. Now, that was from earlier today. This very strong cells Jacqueline was talking about over the downtown core have pushed now further east. But nonetheless, we are still seeing the risk today for some non-severe thunderstorms. Now, in towards Saskatchewan, where we're also seeing the risk of some severe thunderstorms. Right now, a watch has been issued for Melfort, Choiceland, and for Carrot River. Jumping in towards Alberta now, the active weather continues, I tell you. So getting through the foothills, this is where you could be seeing some non-severe storms. Heading up further north, isolated and severe. So again, you got to keep an eye on the sky. If things are looking ominous, you may not want to go out for that afternoon run. We have all the right ingredients there, a lot of instability in the air, and a lot of moisture as well. Now, coming up, we're going to be talking about some of the active weather. Lots of funnel clouds have been reported, and we have been talking about a lot of active weather as well. Rachel Schoutsen here with you. We still have the risk of seeing those tornado lookalikes, those funnel clouds along the lake shores. So northern parts of Lake Erie, along Lake Ontario as well. Now, the good news is these are generally weak in nature. However, if they do come closer to the ground, these could be possibly spelling some trouble. But for now, they have been quite weak. Now, I want to show you the risk as well. This is the risk of some thunderstorms for today. The good news is they are non-severe, but they are quite widespread. And this is exactly what we have been seeing. Some pretty strong, potent cells making their way through the Greater Toronto area. Slow-moving cells as well over St. Catharines. Now, Take a look at this huge trough in the jet stream almost down towards Louisiana, towards Texas, and this is allowing a lot of cool air to filter into places like Ontario and Quebec. But out in towards the Atlantic provinces, out in towards Newfoundland, they have not had any trouble getting nice and warm. I do want to mention quickly, St. John's, Newfoundland has been breaking some records today. Felt like 38 degrees. Now more on the Long Ranger. That's coming up. Yes, active weather right across the country. Some of us were talking about funnel clouds. Some are talking about extreme heat. Some severe thunderstorm watches. We'll break all of that down. Rachel Schoutsen here with you. And I want to show you this. This is a weather advisory for southern Ontario around the Great Lakes for the production of some funnel clouds throughout the day today. Now, they have been dropped just in between London heading out towards Hamilton. So this area, the city of Toronto, also has been dropped as well, but still seeing them in place around Windsor, Leamington, stretching up towards Port Stanley, and then Pickering and Oshawa as well. The photos from Leamington have been pretty impressive of these funnel clouds. Now, they are weak in nature, which is good news. Now, we are seeing the risk of some thunderstorms throughout the day today, and Jacqueline Whittle actually did get caught up in some active weather in Toronto. Here she is right now. All right, thanks so much, Jacqueline. And that cell has moved out of the area, but you know what? We do have the potential to see some more active weather. So in towards this evening, we have a series of weak troughs, and that is producing some moisture. So up in towards northern Ontario, that's where we are getting the rain. Looks like southern Ontario and the greater Toronto area is staying dry, but again, some more rain pushing off in towards Ottawa and Montreal. Now, let's head in towards Saskatchewan, where we are taking a look at a severe thunderstorm watch issued for Melfort, Choiceland, and Carrot River. So we could possibly seeing some damaging winds through here, heavy downpours, hail as well. So you do have to keep an eye on the sky, as we always say. Now, jumping in towards the prairies, also looking at the chance of some very active weather throughout the foothills, isolated and severe storms north of Edmonton. You can learn more about that on the Weather Network online. Now, let's finish off in the beautiful Atlantic provinces, where things have been hot and they have been sticky. So look at this, Bridgetown 22, but feeling more like 30. Humidity records, an all-time record has been broken in St. John's. It feeling like 35 for this evening, but during the day it felt more like 38. All-time record. Now, you will want to stay with us here on the Weather Network. More on the active weather. That's all coming up. Well, active weather is definitely what we're covering here at the Weather Network, and here's a look at some of our developing stories. So we continue to watch for some severe thunderstorms. I'll tell you exactly where, and record heat in Atlantic Canada. Some all-time records have been broken, and also an active evening ahead for the West, and that's exactly what I want to get into right now. We are taking a look at the risk of severe thunderstorms. We do have a watch in place right now. That is for parts of Saskatchewan, so Melfort, Choiceland, Carrot River, you're all included in that. And then as we jump in towards Alberta, we're also seeing a risk as well. So along the foothills, a non-severe risk, and then north of Edmonton, isolated and severe storms are possible throughout the day today. Now, speaking of Edmonton, that's where we find Margot Morin. Let's join her right now. All right, Margot, thanks so much for that. And I'm sure a lot of you will be camping. So yes, protect yourself from wildlife. Also, I want to mention there is a campfire ban throughout BC. So if camping is in your plans for this weekend, doesn't look like you'll be making s'mores for your camping plans. Now, taking a look at some of the heat and humidity, very dry in places feeling like 30 degrees once you factor in all of that humidity. Now, we do have some moisture making its way through the prairies for this evening. Again, that risk of some possible storms throughout northern parts of Alberta, but for the most part, things are staying dry. We do have a cold front pushing through the area, and this is what could be sparking up some of the storms. Look like it is fairly slow moving as it heads in towards Saskatchewan, and then later on this week making its way in towards Manitoba. Now, the active weather not just happening throughout the west, also happening through parts of southern Ontario. So this weather advisory is for the formation of some cold core funnel clouds. Now, they are weak in nature, but with the rotation in the atmosphere as the clouds continue to grow, we're definitely keeping an eye on this, and also keeping an eye on the severe thunderstorm watch, non-severe in nature rather, throughout parts of southern Ontario. And I also want to quickly mention record heat in St. John's, feeling like 38. Now stay with us. We're taking a look at our top 5 tornadoes. That's coming up. An interesting look at that top 5 with the devastating Canadian tornadoes. Rachel Schoutsen here with you. And talking about tornadoes, these are tornado lookalikes, funnel clouds. This is what we are seeing the potential of seeing today through southern parts of Ontario. Basically, along the lake shores, we've already seen some through Leamington. Some great photos have been sent in through here. Now, the risk of thunderstorms, that does continue throughout southern Ontario today. And again, quite widespread, the Greater Toronto area included, as well as stretching right in towards Quebec. Now, Ontario, not the only place that is seeing the risk of thunderstorms. Also in towards Manitoba as well. So Winnipeg, not included in that, but in that general area. Grand Rapids, you can see that as well around Lake Winnipeg. So if you are camping, I know it's a popular week to be out on vacation. Keep an eye on the sky. And then throughout Alberta, the risk continues along the foothills. Could be more isolated and severe anywhere north of Edmonton. Now, you will want to stay with us. Our active weather watch, it all continues.
Visit our...
Well, there has been no shortage of active weather today. Right across the country, we have been following a lot of stories, so we'll dive into them right now. Rachel Schoutsen here with you, and let's start off through southern Ontario, where we did see some pretty impressive thunderstorms bubbling up today, which also left us in a risk of seeing some funnel clouds. And we did see some through Leamington. Pretty impressive. Thanks so much for sending them in. But Jacqueline Whittle, she was out earlier today, and she actually got caught in some of the storms. Here's her update right now. All right, Jacqueline, thanks so much for that. And yes, the weak rotation with the growing clouds, that's exactly what the earlier risk was today, and that's what we were looking at. And we're also looking at this thunderstorm risk, non-severe in nature. Now, who's getting wet later on throughout today? Well, we are seeing weak troughs moving through the area. So for northern parts of Ontario, also stretching out of Ottawa in towards Quebec, this is where we could be seeing the rain, light showers lingering throughout the evening and then in towards tomorrow morning. Also heading up in towards Manitoba and northwestern Ontario, the thunderstorm risk also here, non-severe in nature. And let's let it continue in towards Alberta as well. Also seeing that along the foothills, we could be seeing non-severe storms. And then as we head further north, isolated and severe storms are possible. That's for today. But as we jump in towards tomorrow, things are getting a little bit more severe. If you notice that red, that's where we could be seeing some hail and some more stronger storms. Now, if you're camping this weekend, there are fire bans in place for all the provincial parks in BC because of that very dry heat. In terms of the heat, wow, impressive numbers throughout the Atlantic provinces. Also, St. John's, Newfoundland broke a humidity record. It felt like 38 degrees today. More on the active weather coming up here.
For your...
The hail through St. Catharines, yeah. It has been a pretty active day. Rachel Schoutsen here with you. And we still have the risk, the potential for seeing some of those funnel clouds along the northern shores of Lake Erie and around Lake Ontario as well. The Greater Toronto area has been dropped from that risk. We are seeing growing clouds and weak rotation associated with that. So this is again where we could be seeing those funnel clouds. Now, also the risk of some thunderstorms. That's what we are looking at today right across the Greater Toronto area. We have seen some pretty impressive storms sparking up already. Now, this map, it's just such an interesting one here. Take a look at this massive trough, this massive dip in the jet stream, almost down towards Texas and Louisiana. And that's allowing a lot of cool air to filter in towards Ontario. So temperatures below seasonal, but as we head out just a little bit further east, they are having no problems being above seasonal. Take a look at this, feeling like 30 degrees, nice warm temperatures in towards Newfoundland as well. Record-breaking heat. St. John's felt like 38 degrees today. That is record-breaking all time. Good news for them. Now, the Long Ranger will break down the long weekend forecast. You won't want to miss that.